Right, g'day. When selecting sands and evaluating the quality of the sands and particularly particle size distribution, when we're doing it by mechanical method, that is strictly by dry sieving or wet sieving as opposed to pipette method, we want to make a decision on whether it should be dry sieved or wet sieved, and that really comes down to the amount of fines that are in the sand. When two samples turn up to the laboratory, one of our first decisions is whether we're going to wet sieve or dry sieve. Dry sieving tends to underestimate the amount of fines, and so the first thing we do is get an idea of whether they need to be dry sieved or wet sieved, and this is done by placing some material in container and wetting it up and basically stirring it up and getting to see how cloudy it is, which is representative of the silt and clay content within the material. And so the cloudiness is one measure. As you can see, we've got a nice clean gravel here, and it's nice and see-through. It's very little fines. We've got one with an increasing amount of fines but still tolerable, and this is getting to the point where it's getting quite cloudy, and we'll probably have to wet sieve from that one on. And this one here we've got very cloudy, can hardly see through it, and that would definitely be wet sieved. So this is something that we in the lab make that decision for. So the other thing is that that cloudiness is a good test out in the field that you can do to just quickly quantify or get an idea at least of how many fines in there, and whether you should be concerned particularly on batches turning up to site, and whether there needs to be more sampling and a sample sent to the lab for mechanical analysis of particle size distribution. The second part of this is just over time this will tend to settle out, and these bigger containers at the back here have been allowed to settle out for overnight, and they will show us whether there's actually a layer forming on the surface, and that one's got a very minute layer just in here, probably only 0.5 millimeter thick. This one here is getting thicker again, and that's probably about 2 millimeters thick, and he would definitely need to be wet sieved to pick up all that fines. And over here we've got a sample that has got probably 5-6 millimeters of silt and clay in there, and that's definitely a wet sieve method. So well, just to explain a little bit more about the wet sieving process, it's very similar to the dry sieving, but when you get a sample coming in that is very cloudy, we can see a sediment layer forming and we've got lots of fines in there. We'll need to do a wet sieving process. That involves drying the sample, getting a dry weight, known dry weight. We put that sample into a solution of sodium hexametaphosphate. We dissolve that up and stir that up for a set method, for a set amount of time, and then the next step from that would be to pass this solution through a very fine sieve to reduce, to wash through the silt and clay. In this case we're doing it through the 0.63 millimeter sieve, which is the standard for British and New Zealand classifications for silt and clay. Okay, so here's the next step in the wet sieving, is to get the very fine 63 micron sieve wetted up, and we're going to pass our sample through this. So we've made a slurry, and all the silt and clay, because the smaller particles of it are largely in suspension, so pouring off the top of the solution passes most of the silt and clay onto the sieve, and if it is silt and clay it will pass through that fine sieve and out the bottom. And so when we go to calculate this later, it's the weight loss from start to finish as to how much silt and clay has disappeared through the sieves. So we continue to do this until the solution gets very clear, and we've passed all the sand across the sieve. So we've got to the point now where we've washed it through the sieve to the point where it's running clean. There's no more silt and clay coming out the bottom, and what we do is take that sand, take it out, dry it, and then pass it through the stack of sieves in a normal dry sieving process and work out the weight difference, which will be silt and clay. Then add that into the calculation and reporting of the results.